My wife screamed, "You are a worthless loser." During an argument in front of her friends, I said, "You know what? You're right." Then I quit being her loser. What her friends told her after I left the party. So, here's the thing about turning 34 when you're married to someone like Clarissa. It's less of a birthday and more of a production worthy of a Broadway stage, complete with an audience that showed up exclusively to judge the set design and talk trash about the director during intermission. My wife, bless her meticulously filtered heart, had been planning this party for approximately 3 months, which is roughly the same amount of time most people spend planning actual weddings. But this wasn't just any party. No, this was Clarissa's moment to prove to her BMW driving latte sipping I summer in the Hamptons crew that she had successfully adulterated her way into relevance. I spent the entire Saturday transforming our apartment into what can only be described as if Pinterest and Instagram had a baby and that baby threw up all over our living room. We're talking balloon arches and rose gold string lights that probably cost more than my first car and enough eucalyptus garlands to make a koala bear weep with joy. The catering alone could have fed a small village, but instead we had 30 of Clarissa's closest frenemies picking at sushi rolls like they were defusing bombs. And yes, she hired a bartender, an actual human being whose sole job for the evening was to make cocktails with names like Millennial Pink Dream and Basic, but make it classy. I'm pretty sure I saw him die a little inside every time someone asked if the vodka was organic. My role in this extravaganza. I was basically the event coordinator, the cleanup crew, and the guy who made sure the ice bucket stayed full while Clarissa floated around in a dress that cost more than 2 months of groceries, accepting compliments like she was collecting Pokemon cards. Every time someone new arrived, she'd do this thing where she'd squeal, hug them like they'd just returned from war, and then immediately start comparing engagement rings or talking about some boutique in Soho that only accepts customers by appointment. It was exhausting just watching it, and I was the poor sucker who'd been setting up since 9 in the morning. But here's where the evening took a turn from mildly annoying to, "You've got to be kidding me." Around the third round of craft cocktails, when everyone was sufficiently buzzed and the truth serum known as alcohol had kicked in, Clarissa introduced me to some new arrivals. And I quote, "Oh, this is Marcus. He's the guy who fixes air conditioners. Not my husband. Not the man who pays for this apartment and everything in it. Not even the person who spent his entire day making this party possible. Nope. I was demoted to the guy who fixes air conditioners, delivered with the same enthusiasm you'd use to describe someone who cleans porta-potties at music festivals." I smiled, nodded, shook hands with some dude named Brent, who definitely wears boat shoes without socks and calls his dad Pops. Then I retreated to the kitchen to restock the ice because apparently rich people go through frozen water faster than normal humans. That's when I heard it. Clarissa was holding court near the hors d'oeuvres table, surrounded by her usual suspects. Megan, who married a guy with a trust fund and never lets anyone forget it. Ashley, her sister, who works in marketing but mostly just posts on social media. And Jennifer, whose entire personality is her Peloton stats. "So, where are you guys going for vacation this year?" Megan asked, twirling her wine glass like she was in a commercial for sophistication. Clarissa sighed. And I could hear the eye roll from across the room. "We're not going anywhere. Marcus can't afford it." "Excuse me? I'm sorry. Did I just hear that correctly? The guy who's been busting his back working overtime. The guy whose name is on the lease. The guy who literally makes it possible for you to live in an apartment that doesn't require you to share a bathroom with strangers. That guy can't afford a vacation." I stood there holding a bag of ice like it was the only thing tethering me to reality, feeling my blood pressure spike to levels that probably violated some kind of medical safety standard. Jennifer, ever the helpful friend, chimed in with, "Oh no, that's rough. We're doing 2 weeks in Turks and Caicos." I mentioned camping, Clarissa continued, her voice dripping with the kind of disdain usually reserved for describing contagious diseases. "Like, we could go to some state park or whatever." I walked over, still holding the ice like a weapon I wasn't allowed to use. "Actually, I thought camping could be fun. You know, disconnect from technology, enjoy nature, spend some quality time together." The look she gave me could have curdled milk. She rolled her eyes so hard I'm pretty sure she saw her own brain. And then she said it. "Camping? Seriously, Marcus?" I said, "Cabo, not mosquito bites and porta-potties. What are we, broke college students?" Her friends laughed. Actually laughed like I just performed a comedy routine instead of suggesting a perfectly reasonable vacation option. Megan snorted wine through her nose. Ashley literally slapped her knee and Jennifer looked at me with pity as if I'd just admitted I still used a flip phone and thought MySpace was making a comeback. But Clarissa wasn't done. Oh no, she was just warming up for her grand finale. She took a long sip of her wine, set the glass down with the kind of dramatic pause that would make soap opera actors jealous. And then she looked at me with those eyes that used to make me feel loved, but now just made me feel small. And she said loud enough for everyone in the apartment to hear. Loud enough that even the bartenders stopped mid-pour. "You know what, Marcus? You're a worthless loser." The entire room went silent, like you could hear a pin drop, a heartbeat, the sound of my dignity packing its bags. Someone's phone buzzed and it sounded like a foghorn. She kept going because why stop at devastating when you can go for absolutely soul-crushing? You fix air conditioners for a living. How embarrassing is that? My friends have husbands who are doctors, lawyers, investors, and I have a guy who crawls around in attics and comes home smelling like Freon. 30 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. Some were shocked. Some were amused. Some looked away, suddenly very interested in the balloon arch. But they all saw it. They all heard it. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could get angry. I could yell back. I could defend myself and tell everyone in that room that I work 60-hour weeks, that I'm skilled at something most people can't do, that I've kept this household running while she spent money on birthday parties and bottomless brunches. But instead, I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a bitter smile, but a genuine peaceful smile. I straightened my shirt, set down the bag of ice, and said, "You know what, Clarissa? You're absolutely right." She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. "What?" "You're right. I am a worthless loser. At least that's what I am to you. And you know what? I'm done being that person." I looked around the room at all those faces. The same people who'd eaten our food, drunk our booze, enjoyed our hospitality, and I gave them a little nod. Enjoy the party, everyone. The loser's going to see himself out. And I walked straight to the bedroom, grabbed my keys, my wallet, and a jacket. Clarissa followed me, suddenly panicked, suddenly realizing maybe she'd taken it too far. "Marcus, wait. I didn't mean." "Yeah, you did," I said calmly. Not angry, not hurt, just done. "You meant every word, and honestly, thank you, because now I know exactly where I stand." I didn't slam the door, didn't make a scene, just walked out of that apartment, down the stairs, and out into the cool night air where I could finally breathe without choking on the smell of overpriced candles and toxic relationships. Behind me, I could hear the party continuing, the music still playing, people awkwardly trying to restart conversations after witnessing a marriage implode in real time. And you know what? For the first time in years, I felt free. Trevor's apartment smelled like a combination of pepperoni pizza, old sneakers, and freedom. Glorious, beautiful freedom. When I showed up at his door at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, still wearing my party setup clothes and probably looking like I just survived some kind of emotional warfare, he took one look at my face and didn't ask a single question. That's the thing about real friends. They have this sixth sense about when you need an interrogation and when you just need a couch in silence. Trevor, bless his emotionally intelligent heart, went straight for option 2. He opened the door wider, stepped aside, and said exactly 3 words. "Bedroom or couch?" "Couch," I replied, because the last thing I needed was to feel like I was imposing on his personal space more than I already was by showing up unannounced with my marriage in a body bag. He nodded, disappeared into the kitchen, and returned 30 seconds later with 2 cold beers, a bag of tortilla chips that was already half empty, and the TV remote, which he placed in my hand like he was passing me the Olympic torch. "Beer's cold, couch is yours, remote's got fresh batteries. I'm going to be in my room playing video games with headphones on, so holler if you need anything or if you know you want to talk about whatever the hell happened tonight." "Thanks, man," I said. And I meant it with every fiber of my exhausted being. He gave me a fist bump because Trevor's 32 years old and still communicates through gestures that peaked in 2008 and vanished into his bedroom. I heard the door click shut and then it was just me, a beat-up leather couch that had definitely seen better days, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I cracked open the beer, took a long drink, and finally let myself process what had just happened. My wife of 4 years had called me a worthless loser in front of 30 people. I'd walked out and now I was sitting on my buddy's couch at 11:30 on a Saturday night, watching some late-night talk show host make jokes about politicians while I contemplated whether my marriage had been circling the drain for months or if it had just spontaneously combusted in spectacular fashion. I didn't cry, if that's what you're wondering. I wasn't sad exactly. I was more like relieved. Like when you finally pull off a band-aid that's been stuck to your arm for way too long. And yeah, it hurts for a second, but then you realize your skin can finally breathe again. That's what this felt like. Like I could finally breathe without worrying about whether Clarissa would criticize the way I was inhaling oxygen. I must have fallen asleep around 2 o'clock in the morning because the next thing I knew, Sunlight was stabbing me in the eyeballs through Trevor's blinds that didn't quite close all the way. And my neck felt like I'd spent the night wrestling an alligator instead of sleeping on a couch. I reached for my phone to check the time and nearly dropped it when I saw the screen. 62 missed calls. 62. I had to count them twice because surely that number was a glitch in the matrix, right? Wrong. All from Clarissa, starting around midnight and continuing well into the early morning hours. The most recent one being at 6:47 a.m., which meant she'd either not slept at all or had woken up early to continue her campaign of trying to reach me. But wait, there's more. Because the missed calls were just the appetizer. The text messages were the main course, and boy oh boy, was it a feast of emotional whiplash. I scrolled through them with the kind of morbid fascination you have when you're watching a car crash in slow motion. The first few sent around midnight were pretty standard post-fight panic texts. Baby, where are you? And come home. We need to talk and I'm worried about you. Okay, fine. Normal stuff. But then, as the night progressed and I didn't respond, the messages started evolving like some kind of Pokemon of psychological manipulation. 1:30 a.m. I was drunk. Okay, I didn't mean what I said. 2:15 a.m. Marcus, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. 3:03 a.m. Fine, be that way. See if I care. 3:47 a.m. I can't believe you left me at my own birthday party. Do you know how humiliating that was? Wait, hold up. Let me get this straight. I was the humiliating one, not the person who verbally demolished their spouse in front of a crowd of people who were probably texting about it in their group chats before the party even ended. The mental gymnastics required to reach that conclusion deserved an Olympic gold medal. 4:32 a.m. My friends think you're abusive now. You just walked out and abandoned me. And there it was. The classic move. When you can't defend your own behavior, flip the script, and become the victim. I'm abusive because I left after being called worthless. That's like saying the fire is abusive to the house. It's burning down. The logic was so backwards, it could have won a limbo contest. 5:51 a.m. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. 6:47 a.m. If you don't come home right now, I'm calling your mother. Oh, the mother card. Because nothing says mature adult relationship like threatening to tattle to someone's mom. I read through the entire saga twice, drinking it in like it was some kind of dramatic Netflix series, except this was my actual life and I was somehow both the protagonist and the guy getting terrible reviews. Trevor emerged from his bedroom around 9 o'clock, looking like he'd actually slept well, which made one of us. He took one look at me sitting on his couch, phone in hand, expression probably somewhere between bewildered and exhausted, and said, "She's been texting, hasn't she?" 62 calls and about 40 texts, I replied, still scrolling through the greatest hits of Clarissa's overnight emotional journey. Yikes, he said, heading to the kitchen to start a pot of coffee. What's the vibe? Apologetic or defensive? It's like reading a novel called The Many Moods of Clarissa. We've got regret, anger, victimhood, threats, guilt, tripping, and something that I think was supposed to be gaslighting, but came across more like a drunk person trying to explain quantum physics. Trevor laughed, pouring coffee into 2 mugs that definitely didn't match and probably hadn't been washed as thoroughly as they should have been, but I wasn't about to complain. You going to respond? I thought about it for a minute, taking the coffee he offered and letting the warmth seep into my hands. Part of me wanted to write out this long detailed response explaining exactly why what she'd said was messed up, why I'd left, why I deserved basic respect from my own wife. But then I realized something. People who don't respect you when you're standing right in front of them aren't suddenly going to have an epiphany because you sent them a well-crafted text message. You can't logic someone into treating you better. You can't explain your way into their empathy. Either they get it or they don't. And Clarissa had made it pretty clear last night that she didn't. So instead, I typed out one single message. Short, simple, and to the point. You're right. I was a worthless loser. Working on that now. Your stuff will be packed by Friday. I hit send before I could second guess myself. And then I watched as the little delivered notification appeared under my message. Approximately 15 seconds later, my phone started ringing. Clarissa's name lit up the screen like a warning sign on a highway. I stared at it for a moment, watching it buzz and vibrate in my hand. And then I did something that felt absolutely radical. I let it ring. I didn't answer. I didn't decline the call. I just let it ring until it went to voicemail. And then I set the phone face down on the coffee table and took a long sip of Trevor's mediocre coffee. That felt good, didn't it? Trevor asked, grinning like he just watched me win a championship. You have no idea, I said. And for the first time since walking out of that party, I actually smiled. Because silence, it turns out, is the sound of self-respect. And after 4 years of noise, I was ready to enjoy the quiet. Monday morning hit different. I woke up on Trevor's couch with a crick in my neck that felt like someone had replaced my cervical spine with a rusty slinky, but my brain was clearer than it had been in months, maybe years. You know that feeling when you've been walking around with a pebble in your shoe for so long that you forget it's even there? And then one day you finally take it out and suddenly you remember what it's like to walk normally? That's what this felt like. Except the pebble was a whole entire marriage. And taking it out involved walking away from a birthday party like I was in some kind of indie movie about self-discovery. I made coffee in Trevor's kitchen, which was an adventure in itself because his coffee maker looked like it had survived several natural disasters and possibly a small war, and sat at his wobbly kitchen table with a legal pad I'd found in my truck and a pin that barely worked. And that's when the idea hit me. Actually, let me rephrase that. That's when Clarissa's words from Saturday night came back to haunt her in the most spectacular way possible. She'd called me a worthless loser who fixes air conditioners for a living, right? Like that was supposed to be an insult. Like having a skilled trade that people actually need and will pay good money for is somehow embarrassing. Well, here's the thing about being called worthless. It either destroys you or it becomes the best motivation you've ever had. And I was done being destroyed. So, I decided to test a theory. Can a worthless loser start his own HVAC company? Spoiler alert, yes. Yes, he absolutely can. And he can do it before lunchtime on a Monday, too. By 9 a.m., I was on my laptop researching business licenses, LLC formations, and everything I needed to know about going independent. Turns out the internet is full of information when you're actually motivated to look for it instead of spending your evenings watching your wife scroll through Instagram and sigh dramatically because some influencer she's never met bought a new handbag. I filled out forms, read through legal requirements, and started making a checklist of everything I'd need to get this operation off the ground. Business license, check. Insurance? Yep. Going to need that. Bank account, definitely. A name that would make me smile every single time I said it. Oh, absolutely. By 10:30, I was on the phone with the county clerk's office, asking questions about business registration and trying not to laugh when the woman on the other end asked me what I wanted to name my company. Because I'd already decided, sitting there at Trevor's kitchen table with my terrible coffee and my barely working pen, exactly what this company was going to be called: MNC Climate Systems. Professional, right? Sounds legit. Sounds like a company that knows what it's doing. But here's the kicker. MNC doesn't stand for Marcus and Climate or anything boring like that. Nope. MNC stands for Move on Clarissa. I told Trevor during his lunch break, catching him between bites of a sandwich that appeared to be mostly mayonnaise and regret. He stopped mid-chew, stared at me for approximately 5 seconds, and then laughed so hard he actually snorted and had to put his sandwich down to avoid choking. Dude, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. That's the most petty and amazing thing I've ever heard. You're naming your entire business as a message to your ex-wife. Soon to be ex-wife. I corrected because accuracy matters. And yeah, I am. Every time I answer the phone, every time I write an invoice, every time I see that name on my truck, I'm going to remember that I'm moving forward and she's not invited. That's cold, man. I love it, Trevor said, raising his mostly mayonnaise sandwich in a toast to MNC Climate Systems. May your business be successful and your ex-wife be forever confused about whether those initials are about her. By noon, I had filed for my business license online, paid the fees that made my checking account weep a little, but nothing I couldn't recover from, and started designing a logo. Now, I'm not a graphic designer, and my artistic skills peak at stick figures and maybe a decent-looking house if I'm really concentrating, but thank God for websites that let you create logos, even if you have the design sense of a potato. I played around with different fonts, colors, and layouts until I had something that looked professional without screaming. I made this in my buddy's kitchen while having an emotional crisis. The logo was clean blue and white because those are trustworthy colors that say, "We know what we're doing with your expensive HVAC system," with MNC and bold letters and Climate Systems underneath in a smaller, sleeker font. I added a little snowflake and sun icon because symbolism or whatever. And boom. I had a logo that didn't look like a midlife crisis, which was more than I could say for some of the business cards I'd seen from other contractors over the years. But here's where it gets really good. See, I'd been working for the same HVAC company for 6 years. And in that time, I'd built up a pretty solid reputation. I was the guy people requested by name. I was the one who showed up on time, explained things in normal human language instead of technical jargon designed to make people feel stupid, and actually fixed problems instead of just selling people stuff they didn't need. And over those 6 years, I'd had probably a dozen clients tell me, "Marcus, if you ever go independent, you call me first. I'll hire you in a heartbeat." So that's exactly what I did. I started making calls. I reached out to the people who'd given me their personal numbers, the ones who tipped me extra at Christmas, the ones who'd said they wished they could just hire me directly instead of going through the company. And you know what? Every single one of them was interested. Mrs. Patterson, who had a beach house that needed a new system installed. Oh, Marcus, absolutely. When can you start? The Hendersons, whose AC unit I've been maintaining for 4 years. We were just talking about how we wished we could have you instead of whoever the company sends. Yes, sign us up. By Wednesday afternoon, I had a business checking account set up at the credit union down the street from Trevor's place. The woman who helped me, whose name tag said, Patricia, and who had the energy of someone's cool aunt who's really into crafts, was extremely enthusiastic about my business plan. My husband and I need our furnace looked at before winter, she said, sliding me her business card. Call me when you're ready to take appointments. I had my first potential client before I even left the bank. The universe, it seemed, was on my side for once. I also had 3 service calls lined up for the following week. A maintenance check, a repair job, and a consultation for a complete system replacement. That last one was potentially a $15,000 job if I could get it, which would be enough to cover my startup costs, and then some. I spent Wednesday evening pricing out tools I'd need to buy, making lists, and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excited about my own life. Meanwhile, back in the land of filtered selfies and manufactured drama, Clarissa was still texting. The messages had evolved from angry to confused to slightly threatening. You'll regret this, one said. You're making a huge mistake, said another. We can fix this if you just come home and talk to me like an adult, said a third, which was rich coming from the woman who'd chosen a birthday party as the venue to air her grievances about my career choices. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was playing games or trying to punish her, but because there was literally nothing left to say. She'd made it clear how she felt about me. And I'd made it clear that I wasn't going to stick around to be her punching bag anymore. The conversation was over. The relationship was over. And honestly, I was too busy building something new to waste time defending myself to someone who'd already decided I wasn't worth defending. Trevor came home from work that evening to find me surrounded by paperwork, laptop open, legal pad covered in notes and calculations, looking like a beautiful disaster of productivity and determination. How's the empire building going? He asked, dropping his keys on the counter. Pretty good, I said, looking up from a spreadsheet I'd been working on. I've got 3 clients lined up, a logo that doesn't suck, and a business name that makes me smile every time I think about it. And Clarissa? I shrugged, still texting. Still thinks I'll regret this. Trevor grinned, will you? I looked at my laptop screen, at the MNC Climate Systems logo I'd created, at the list of potential clients and the future I was building one decision at a time. The only thing I regret, I said, is not doing this sooner. Thursday afternoon, I was sitting on Trevor's couch doing paperwork for my new business and eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container like a functional adult when my phone buzzed with a text from our apartment building's doorman, Miguel. Hey man, your wife is on her way up. Thought you'd want a heads up. I texted him earlier in the week to let him know I'd moved out temporarily and to give him Trevor's address in case anything important came up. Miguel was good people. He'd seen enough domestic drama in his 15 years working that building to write a book. And he had this sixth sense about when to warn somebody that chaos was incoming. I barely had time to set down my lo mein before there was a knock on Trevor's door. Not a normal knock either. This was the kind of knock that had emotion behind it. Urgent, demanding, the knock of someone who'd rehearsed a whole speech in their car and was ready to perform it whether you wanted to hear it or not. I looked through the peephole and there she was, Clarissa, looking like she'd stepped out of a makeup tutorial about the natural crying look, complete with mascara that was strategically smudged but not too smudged. You know what I mean? This was calculated sadness, the kind you see in music videos about heartbreak. I opened the door and she immediately launched into what I can only describe as a telenovela audition. Marcus, please, she said. And her voice had that little crack in it that was supposed to make my heart melt, but instead just made me tired. You're throwing away for years of our lives together. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I leaned against the doorframe, crossed my arms, and took a deep breath before responding. No, Clarissa, I'm not throwing away 4 years. I'm walking away from 4 years of being ashamed of myself. There's a difference. She blinked at me like I'd just started speaking ancient Greek. What are you talking about? I was never ashamed of you. Really? I said, and I could feel my voice getting calmer, even as the frustration was building inside my chest. You weren't ashamed when you introduced me as the guy who fixes air conditioners instead of your husband. You weren't ashamed when you told your friends I couldn't afford a vacation. You weren't ashamed when you looked me in the eye at your birthday party and called me a worthless loser in front of 30 people. I was drunk, she protested. And there it was. The excuse I've been waiting for. The classic, I was drunk, so it doesn't count. Defense, as if alcohol just magically creates opinions that don't exist in your sober brain. News flash. Drunk words are sober thoughts with the filter turned off. Then maybe you should examine what kind of person you become when you drink, I said. Because drunk Clarissa and sober Clarissa seem to have the same opinion about me. And honestly, I'm done trying to figure out which one is the real you. She switched tactics then, like she was scrolling through a menu of manipulation techniques, trying to find one that would work. The tears started flowing a little harder, still controlled, still camera ready, but with more volume. I just wanted more for us, Marcus. I wanted us to have nice things, to go nice places. Is that so wrong? Is it wrong to have ambition? Having ambition isn't wrong, I said, and I meant it. But spending every single dinner, every conversation, every quiet moment trying to turn me into someone else. That's not ambition, Clarissa. That's just mean. You didn't fall in love with some investment banker or tech bro or whatever fantasy guy you've got in your head. You married a guy who fixes air conditioners. And if that's not good enough for you, if I'm not good enough for you, then why the hell did you marry me in the first place? She didn't have an answer for that. She just stood there, mouth slightly open, tears still perfectly positioned on her cheeks like they were waiting for their close-up. So I continued because apparently 4 years of holding my tongue had created a backlog of things I needed to say. Every time we went out with your friends, you'd find some way to diminish what I do. Every time someone asked about my work, you'd change the subject or make some joke about me being handy around the house like I was a glorified maintenance man instead of a skilled professional. You wanted me to dress differently, talk differently, have different hobbies, different friends. You wanted me to order salads and say words like networking and synergy without irony. You wanted me to be someone I'm not, and I'm sorry, but I'm done apologizing for being myself. That's when she pulled out what I call the legal threat card, which is what people do when they realize that emotional manipulation isn't working and they need to try a different angle. She straightened up, wiped her tears with the back of her hand in a gesture that was probably supposed to look strong and determined and said, "You know what? Fine, but I've lived in that apartment for 2 years. I have rights, Marcus. You can't just kick me out." I almost laughed. Actually, I did laugh just a little bit, which made her face go red in that way it does when she's really angry, but trying to maintain composure. "Rights?" I said, "Clarissa, your name isn't on the lease. You don't pay rent. You don't pay utilities. You don't pay for groceries unless you count buying organic almond milk once a month as contributing. You're not a tenant. You're a guest. You're my guest, actually, which is why I've been so generous about letting you live rentrée in my apartment while you spent your salary on birthday parties and brunch. That's not fair," she said. And her voice was getting higher now, losing some of that calculated control. "I contribute in other ways." "Like what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What exactly do you contribute, Clarissa?" "Because I pay the rent. I pay the utilities. I buy the groceries. I do the cooking when we're not ordering takeout. I do most of the cleaning. I set up your entire birthday party while you were at the spa getting ready. So, please enlighten me. What are these mysterious other ways you contribute?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. It was like watching a fish trying to breathe on land. Finally, she said, "I make our home beautiful. You buy throw pillows," I corrected. "Throw pillows that cost more than my truck payment and serve no functional purpose except to make the couch uncomfortable. That's not contribution, that's decoration." "You're being cruel," she said. And now the tears were coming for real. Not the strategic ones from before, but actual tears of frustration. And maybe, just maybe, the dawning realization that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. "I'm being honest," I said. "And honestly, Clarissa, we've been over for a while now. We've both known it. You just thought you could keep me around as your personal ATM and ego boost until someone better came along. Well, guess what? I'm the one who found someone better." Her eyes went wide. "You're seeing someone?" "Yeah," I said. "Myself. I'm seeing myself clearly for the first time in 4 years. And it turns out I actually like that guy. He's got ambition. He's got skills. He's starting his own business. He's pretty great, actually, and he deserves better than someone who thinks he's worthless." She tried one more time, reaching out to touch my arm in that way she used to do when we first started dating, when touching my arm meant something instead of just being a manipulation technique. "Marcus, please, can we just talk about this? Really talk without all the anger and the accusations." I gently moved my arm away. "There's nothing left to talk about, Clarissa. You said what you really think about me. I heard you. 30 other people heard you and now I'm acting accordingly. Your stuff will be packed up by Friday. You can pick it up this weekend. Miguel will let you in. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. And there was real panic in her voice now. I don't know. Your mom's house. Ashley's place. One of your friends who has a husband successful enough to afford a guest room. The sarcasm was thick enough to spread on toast, but I couldn't help it. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful when you want to be. She stood there for another moment, trying to think of something else to say, some other angle to work, some way to turn this situation back in her favor. But I could see the moment she realized it wasn't going to work. Her shoulders slumped, her face crumpled, and she pulled out her phone, not to call someone for support, but to probably text her friends about what a monster I was being. This isn't over, she said, which is what people always say when something is definitely over and they just haven't accepted it yet. Yeah, it is, I said softly. It's been over. We just finally made it official. She turned and walked down the hallway toward the elevator, her heels clicking against the floor in an angry rhythm. I watched her go, waited until I heard the elevator ding and the doors close. And then I went back inside Trevor's apartment and closed the door. My Chinese food was cold by then, but I didn't care. I heated it up in the microwave, sat back down on the couch, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Trevor came home about an hour later and found me watching some documentary about penguins of all things, looking completely relaxed for the first time all week. She came by, didn't she? He asked, reading my expression. Yep, I said. And she left for good this time. He grabbed a beer from the fridge, sat down next to me, and clinked his bottle against my container of reheated Lane. To new beginnings, he said, to being done with old endings, I replied, and we sat there watching penguins waddle across Antarctica, and it was honestly the most at peace I'd felt in years. Saturday morning started peaceful enough. I was at the apartment, my apartment. Let me emphasize that packing up Clarissa's stuff into boxes that I'd specifically bought for this purpose because I'm not a complete savage. I was actually being pretty respectful about it. Carefully folding her clothes, wrapping her decorative nonsense in bubble wrap, labeling everything clearly. I even bought the nice boxes from U-Haul instead of just grabbing whatever was behind the liquor store like some kind of break-up amateur. I was halfway through her closet wondering why anyone needs 17 pairs of black pants that all look identical when I heard the knock on the door. I checked the peephole and immediately knew I was in trouble. Not just Clarissa trouble. Not even Clarissa and her sister trouble. No, this was the full arsenal. Standing in my hallway was an entire delegation of estrogen and opinions. Clarissa's mom, Diane, her sister Ashley, and 3 of her best friends, including Megan, who always acts like she's married to a combination of George Clooney and Einstein, and walks around with this permanent expression that suggests she smells something bad, but is too polite to mention it. This was an intervention, a full-blown, coordinated, probably rehearsed in a group chat intervention. I opened the door because refusing to would have just meant they'd stand out there making a scene in the hallway. And Mrs. Patterson from 3B was already nosy enough without giving her premium entertainment. They filed in like they were entering a courtroom. And I swear I saw Ashley actually crack her knuckles like she was getting ready for a fight. The energy in the room shifted from man peacefully packing boxes to man on trial for crimes against committed relationships. Diane went first because of course she did. She's got that mom authority that makes you want to sit up straight and apologize for things you didn't even do. Marcus, she said, and her voice had that disappointed teacher quality that probably worked great when Clarissa was 12, but wasn't quite landing the same way on her soon-to-be son-in-law. Couples fight. All couples fight. You don't end a marriage over one argument. I set down the box I'd been packing and turned to face the firing squad. Diane, with all due respect, it wasn't an argument. It was a public execution. There's a difference between fighting and being called a worthless loser in front of 30 people at a birthday party I spent all day setting up. One of the friends, I think her name was Jennifer, the Peloton one, jumped in with, she was just venting. Women need to vent sometimes. Venting is complaining about your day to your friends over wine, I said, keeping my voice calm, even though I could feel my blood pressure starting to rise. What Clarissa did was verbal abuse with an audience. There's a pretty significant difference between those two things. Ashley, ever the loyal sister, crossed her arms and hit me with the excuse I'd been waiting for. She was drunk, Marcus. People say things they don't mean when they're drunk. I couldn't help but laugh at that one. Then maybe she should examine her relationship with alcohol. Or better yet, maybe drunk Clarissa is just honest Clarissa without the filter. Either way, I heard what I needed to hear. That's when Megan decided to grace me with her wisdom. She actually scoffed like an actual audible scoff and said with this tone that could freeze lava, "You're being immature about this whole thing. Clarissa deserves better than someone who just runs away when things get tough." I looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her. This woman who'd spent the last 2 years at every dinner party talking about her boyfriend's medical practice and their trips to Europe and their investment portfolio like it was personality trait. And I smiled. Not a fake smile, not an angry smile, but a genuine smile that probably looked a little bit crazy given the circumstances. "You know what, Megan? You're absolutely right." She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. They all looked a little confused, actually, like I'd just started speaking backwards. "Clarissa does deserve better," I continued. "She deserves someone who meets her standards, someone who makes enough money to impress her friends, someone who wears the right clothes and says the right things and orders the right items off the menu. Someone who's okay with being constantly reminded that they're not quite good enough, but they should keep trying anyway. And you're right, that's not me. That's never going to be me. So, I'm setting her free to find that person." "You're welcome." The room went quiet for a second. You could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Someone's phone buzzed. And then Clarissa, who'd been standing slightly behind her mom this whole time like she was using Diane as a human shield, decided to pull out the nuclear option. "I'm pregnant," she said. Just like that. No build-up, no context. Just dropped it like a bomb in the middle of the conversation. The other women gasped. Actually gasped like they were in a soap opera. Ashley grabbed her sister's hand. Diane put her hand over her mouth. Megan looked at me like I'd just been revealed as a villain in a murder mystery. I crossed my arms and stared at Clarissa. Really stared at her and watched her face start to crack under the pressure of maintaining eye contact with someone who knew she was lying. "No, you're not," I said calmly. "Yes, I am," she insisted, her voice getting higher. "Clarissa, you're not pregnant. And I know you're not pregnant for several reasons. First, unless you conceived between margaritas last Tuesday, the timeline doesn't work because we haven't had sex in 6 weeks. Second, you literally just had your period 2 weeks ago. I know because you complained about it and made me go to CVS at midnight for tampons. And third, you're not pregnant because you would have led with that instead of bringing your entire cheer squad here to guilt trip me." Her face went from pale to red in about 3 seconds flat. Ashley looked at her sister with this expression of dawning horror, like she was realizing in real time that maybe she'd picked the wrong side of this fight. Even Diane looked skeptical now. Her mom radar clearly pinging that something wasn't adding up. But I wasn't done because honestly, I'd been holding this one in for a while, and it felt like the universe had just given me permission to say it out loud. "Also," I added, leaning against the wall with my arms still crossed. "Weren't you in Miami 3 weeks ago for that conference? The one where you posted 17 Instagram stories from hotel bars and exactly 0 photos from any actual conference sessions? The one where your conference buddy Jake somehow appeared in half your photos looking very unconference-like." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that has weight to it. Heavy, thick, awkward silence that made everyone in the room suddenly very interested in looking at their shoes or the ceiling or literally anywhere except at each other. Clarissa's mouth opened and closed like a goldfish. No sound came out. No defense, no explanation, no indignant denial, just silence. Jennifer quietly said, "I think maybe we should go." "That's probably a good idea," I agreed. Diane looked at her daughter with an expression I couldn't quite read. Somewhere between disappointment and confusion and maybe a little bit of anger. "Clarissa, is there something you need to tell me?" "Mom, it's not." Clarissa started, but Diane held up her hand. "We'll talk about this at home," she said, her voice cold in a way I'd never heard from her before. She turned to me. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I didn't know. I didn't realize." "It's okay," I said, and I meant it. Diane had always been decent to me. This wasn't her fault. You were just trying to help your daughter. I get it. The whole group started shuffling toward the door like students leaving detention. Ashley wouldn't look at me. Jennifer and the other friends, whose names I honestly still couldn't remember and didn't care to learn, basically speed walked out. Megan paused at the door, opened her mouth like she was going to say something, then apparently thought better of it, and left without a word. Smart choice. Clarissa was the last one in the apartment besides me. She stood there in my living room, surrounded by boxes of her stuff, looking smaller somehow than she had when she'd arrived with her backup singers. "Marcus," she said quietly. "Don't," I said, holding up my hand. "Just don't. Whatever you're about to say, whatever excuse or explanation or justification you've got cooked up, I don't want to hear it. You came here with your mom and your friends to make me feel guilty, to pressure me into taking you back. And when that didn't work, you lied about being pregnant. Do you understand how messed up that is? Do you get how manipulative and cruel that is? I wasn't, she started. You were, I interrupted. You absolutely were. And the Miami thing. I wasn't even sure about that until just now. I was testing a theory. But your face told me everything I needed to know. She looked like she might cry. And for a split second, I almost felt bad almost. But then I remembered Saturday night, remembered her voice saying, worthless loser in front of all those people. Remembered all the little digs and comments and moments over the past 4 years where she'd made it clear that I wasn't quite good enough for her vision of what her life should be. Your stuff will be ready by tomorrow, I said, you can come get it, or you can send someone to get it, but either way, I want you out of my apartment and out of my life. We're done, Clarissa. We've been done for a while. This is just making it official. She left without another word, and I watched through the window as the whole group got into Ashley's SUV and drove away. I went back to packing her stuff, and honestly, the boxes felt lighter somehow. Or maybe I just felt lighter. Either way, I packed up the last 4 years of my life into cardboard boxes from U-Haul, labeled them clearly, and stacked them by the door. Trevor called later to check on me. How'd the intervention go? She told them she was pregnant. I said, what? Don't worry, she's not. She also might have been cheating on me in Miami. What? Yeah, it's been a day. How's your Saturday going? He laughed. Not nearly as interesting as yours. You okay? I looked around my apartment. My clean, quiet, drama-free apartment that was slowly starting to feel like mine again. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I really am. Monday morning, I was under a kitchen sink in a condo in Riverside replacing a garbage disposal that had apparently decided to become a modern art installation instead of doing its actual job when my phone started blowing up. Not just a few texts here and there, but that constant buzzing that means either someone died or something went viral. Given that nobody in my immediate family knew how to use social media beyond posting minion memes on Facebook, I figured it was probably the latter. I wiped my hands on my work pants, pulled out my phone, and saw about 15 texts from Trevor. Each one more excited than the last. Dude, check your email. Your boss is calling you. This is wild. Call me now. The man had a real gift for building suspense without actually providing useful information, which is probably why he worked in IT support, where being vague and unhelpful is practically a job requirement. Then my actual boss called Bob Richardson, owner of Richardson HVAC. A man who normally only called me if there was an emergency or if he'd accidentally pocket dialed me, which happened more often than you'd think for a guy who sells climate control systems for a living. I answered, expecting him to tell me about some urgent job that needed my immediate attention. Marcus, he said, and I could hear something in his voice. Amusement, maybe? I just got an interesting email this morning. Someone claiming that you've been stealing equipment from the company. My stomach dropped. What? Bob, I haven't stolen anything. You can check inventory. You can check my truck. You can. He laughed. Actually laughed. Relax, kid. I know you haven't stolen anything. We already checked. Nothing's missing. Not a single wrench out of place, but let me guess who sent this email. Initials CJ. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Clarissa Johnson. Bingo. She sent this whole detailed email about how you've been misappropriating company resources and how I should investigate your criminal activity immediately. The woman used the word malfeasance. Marcus, who uses the word malfeasance in a real email. Someone who thinks watching legal dramas makes them a lawyer, I muttered. Anyway, we checked everything out. You're completely clear, and I just wanted to give you a heads up that your ex-wife is apparently trying to get you fired. Thought you should know. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate you checking first instead of just believing her. Marcus, you've worked for me for 6 years. You're one of my best guys. I'm not going to fire you because some angry ex sends me an email that reads like she used a thesaurus for every other word. But hey, speaking of which, I heard you're starting your own company. My heart did a little skip. Yeah, I am. I was going to tell you officially next week. I'm giving proper notice. I'm not poaching clients. I'm doing everything by the book. I know you are, Bob said, and he sounded almost proud. You're a good guy, Marcus. You're going to do well on your own. Just promise me you won't completely destroy my business with your superior customer service and reasonable prices. I laughed. I'll try to leave you some clients. That's all I ask. Now, get back to work. And Marcus, change your locks if you haven't already. Way ahead of you, boss. I hung up and immediately called Trevor, who answered before the first ring even finished. Did you see? He said, skipping right past any normal greeting. See what? I just got off the phone with my boss about Clarissa trying to get me fired for stealing equipment I didn't steal. Oh man, it gets better. Check Instagram. Check Twitter. Check literally anywhere. She posted this whole thing on her Instagram stories about when you date down, they drag you down with this sad filtered selfie that I'm pretty sure she took 17 times to get the right angle. I opened Instagram while walking back to my truck, and sure enough, there it was. Clarissa's story posted about 3 hours ago, a black and white photo of her looking wistfully off to the side like she was auditioning for a role in a sad indie film about beautiful people having first world problems. The text overlay said, "When you date down, they drag you down. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. Hashtag self-worth know ya value hashtag M." Moving on, I stared at it for a second, processing the absolute audacity of this woman to post something like that after everything that had happened, and then I started scrolling through the responses, and that's when I understood why Trevor was so excited. See, here's the thing about having a public meltdown at a party with 30 witnesses in the age of smartphones: people record stuff. And apparently multiple people at Clarissa's birthday party had recorded her little worthless loser speech and decided that this Instagram story was the perfect time to share those videos with the world. The comments section had become a digital crime scene, and Clarissa was the victim of her own evidence. The first comment was from someone named at Jessica Martin _23. "Girl, we were all there. We saw what you did. This is not the flex you think it is." Attached was a 10-second video of Clarissa, wine glass in hand, saying clear as day, "You're a worthless loser. You fix air conditioners for a living. How embarrassing is that?" The second comment from @Brian_Chin. "Maybe don't call your husband a loser at your birthday party if you don't want people to think you're the problem." Another video, different angle, showing the entire scene, including my calm exit. Then came @Melisic_fitness. "I was at this party. He set up everything. He was nothing but nice to everyone and she humiliated him in front of all of us. This post is wild." The comments kept coming and they were brutal. Someone had even posted a split-screen comparison of Clarissa's Instagram post with one of the videos from the party, pointing out the irony of her talking about being dragged down when the videos clearly showed her doing the dragging. My personal favorite comment came from @DavidMorrison888. "Imagine calling your landlord a loser while living rentree in his apartment. The math ain't mate." I screenshot that one and sent it to Trevor with 3 laughing emojis. But wait, it gets better, because apparently some of Clarissa's friends, former friends I should say, had decided that this Instagram post was their opportunity to share their own stories. Megan, yes, that Megan who'd been at the intervention, commented, "Clarissa, I love you, but we all knew Marcus was holding things together. Maybe reflect before you post." The comment had 127 likes. Another friend, someone I vaguely remembered from various brunches, wrote, "I always thought Marcus was great. He was always kind, always helpful. Maybe the problem wasn't him." Even some people I didn't know started piling on. The whole thing had apparently been shared to some local community group, and random strangers were weighing in with their opinions about relationship dynamics and public humiliation, and whether calling someone a loser at their own party was ever justified. It had become a whole thing, a legitimate social media event, and Clarissa was losing the court of public opinion by a landslide. Trevor sent me another text. "Dude, there are now 3 different videos from different angles. It's like the Zapruder film of birthday party breakups." I couldn't help but laugh. The whole situation was absurd. Here I was trying to move on with my life, start my business, be a mature adult about a painful situation, and the internet had decided to turn my marriage into a trending topic. Part of me felt bad for Clarissa. This kind of public humiliation couldn't feel good, even if she'd brought it on herself. But then I remembered Saturday night, remembered her voice, remembered the way she'd looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, and the sympathy evaporated pretty quickly. By lunchtime, Clarissa had deleted the Instagram story, but of course, the internet is forever. People had screenshot everything, and those screenshots were making the rounds on various platforms. Someone had even created a meme using one of the party videos with the caption, "When you call someone a loser, but you're the one who ends up losing." It had been shared 3,000 times. My phone rang again. This time it was Mrs. Patterson, my client with the beach house. "Marcus, honey, I just saw the most interesting video on Facebook." "Oh no," I said. "Oh yes," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I always thought your wife was a bit much, if I'm being honest. Too concerned with appearances, you know, but that video, my goodness, you handled that with such grace." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I'm just trying to move forward. Well, I told my bridge club about your new company, and 3 of them need work done. I'm sending you their numbers. Consider it my contribution to your fresh start." After I hung up with her, I sat in my truck for a minute, eating a sandwich and watching the comments continue to roll in on Clarissa's various social media posts. The internet had spoken and the verdict was clear. She'd messed up and everyone knew it. Trevor called during his lunch break. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfying is it to watch the internet defend you? I'm not going to lie, I said. It's pretty satisfying, but also kind of sad. Like this is really how our marriage ends, with viral videos and angry comments. Hey man, she chose to make it public when she decided to humiliate you in front of 30 people. The internet just decided to weigh in. That's not on you. He was right. Of course, I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't shared any videos. I hadn't made any dramatic statements on social media. I just walked away, tried to move on, and the truth had caught up with Clarissa all on its own. Turns out when you treat people badly in public, the public has opinions about it. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Ashley, Clarissa's sister. She's really upset about those videos. Can you ask people to take them down? I stared at the text for a long moment, considering my response. Finally, I typed back, I didn't post them. I don't control what other people do. Maybe she should have thought about that before she said those things in public. The response came quickly. You're being petty. No, I replied. I'm being done. There's a difference. I blocked the number and went back to working on my business plan. Because here's the thing about going viral for the right reasons. It's excellent for business. My phone had been ringing all day with people who'd seen the videos, felt bad for me, and wanted to support my new company. Some were people I knew, some were friends of friends, and some were complete strangers who just liked the idea of giving their money to someone who seemed like a decent human being instead of a faceless corporation. By the end of the day, I had 7 new clients lined up, and my calendar for the next 2 weeks was completely full. The Worthless Loser was booked solid. And honestly, it felt pretty great. Turns out, sometimes karma doesn't just exist. It goes viral, gets shared 3,000 times, and comes with a side of new business opportunities. I texted Trevor. Remember when she said I regret leaving? He replied immediately, yeah, I think she might have gotten that backwards. 2 weeks after the great Instagram debacle of my failed marriage, I was starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, life was finally settling into some kind of normal rhythm. My business was picking up momentum faster than I'd expected. I'd moved back into my apartment, which now felt like an actual home instead of a museum dedicated to throw pillows and passive-aggressive tension. And I hadn't heard from Clarissa in almost 5 days. 5 glorious, peaceful, drama-free days. I should have known it was too good to last. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was doing a maintenance check on a commercial unit for a small law office downtown when I got a call from Miguel, the doorman at my building. Hey, Marcus, he said, and his voice had that tone that immediately made my stomach drop. So, and I need to let her in. I told her you changed the locks, and she wasn't on the approved guest list anymore. She's currently in the lobby having what I can only describe as a full meltdown. Like, I've seen police came, told her to leave. She left screaming about lawsuits. Just FYI, the next morning I got the letter. It arrived via certified mail, which meant I had to sign for it, which meant the postal worker got to witness my face as I read the return address and realized what it was. Legal correspondence, she said cheerfully. Have a great day. I opened it in my truck and honestly, it was a masterpiece of legal-adjacent nonsense. The letterhead said Peterson and Associates, which sounded official enough, and it was signed by someone named Todd Peterson, Esquire, who I immediately Googled and discovered had graduated from law school approximately 3 years ago, and based on his Yelp reviews, specialized in small claims court, and disappointing his clients. The letter was something else. It started with, Dear Mr. Marcus Johnson, which was already wrong because that's not how you address someone in a formal letter, but okay. Then it launched into this elaborate explanation of how I had unlawfully evicted Clarissa from her residence and had caused her severe emotional distress, reputational harm, and financial hardship by changing the locks without proper notice and publicly humiliating her through social media proxies. Social media proxies. Like I'd hired a team of people to post those party videos. Like I'd orchestrated some kind of elaborate revenge campaign instead of just walking away and letting the truth speak for itself. But here's where it got really good. The letter demanded, and I quote, immediate restitution in the amount of $15,000 for emotional damages, plus an additional $5,000 for the cost of temporary housing and relocation expenses to be paid within 30 days. Or we will pursue further legal action, including but not limited to filing a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress. I read it 3 times, each time getting more amused. $15,000 for emotional distress. The woman had called me a worthless loser in front of 30 people, tried to fake a pregnancy to manipulate me, possibly cheated on me in Miami, attempted to get me fired from my job, and now she wanted me to pay her for the emotional distress of experiencing consequences for her own actions. The audacity was actually impressive in a sort of horrible way. I called Trevor immediately. Dude, you're not going to believe this. She's suing you? How did you know? Because she posted on Instagram about taking legal action against her abuser about an hour ago. The comments are, well, they're not supporting her theory. I pulled up Instagram and sure enough, there it was. Another filtered selfie. This one with her looking brave and determined with the caption, "Sometimes you have to fight back against those who try to destroy you. Taking legal action against my abuser. No one should have to go through what I've been through. Hashtag speaky out truth, hashtag legal action, #strongwomen." The top comment with 847 likes said, "Girl, we all saw the videos. You're not the victim here." Another one, "Abuser. He literally just changed his locks to his own apartment." And my personal favorite. "I'm a family law attorney and this ain't it. Delete this before your actual lawyer sees it." But I had a more immediate problem, which was this demand letter asking for 20 grand. I needed actual legal advice, not just internet comments and my own sense of righteous indignation. Fortunately, I had a friend who owed me a favor. Gavin Matthews and I had gone to high school together, and he'd become the kind of lawyer who did family law and helped people navigate messy divorces, which meant he'd seen every manipulation tactic in the book. I'd fixed his AC last summer during a heat wave and refused to charge him because that's what friends do. And he told me if I ever needed legal help, he'd return the favor. I called in that favor. "Marcus, my man," he answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you're calling because your AC broke and not because your ex-wife is doing something insane."
Option B, I said.
Definitely option B. I met him at his office that afternoon and showed him the letter. He read it, and I watched his expression go from professional to amused to outright laughing. "Oh man," he said, wiping his eyes. "Oh man, this is good. This is really good. Good for me or good for entertainment purposes? Both. Marcus, this letter is garbage. Complete garbage. You didn't evict her because she was never a legal tenant. You changed locks to your own apartment, which you have every right to do. You didn't cause her emotional distress. She caused her own problems by being publicly terrible in social media proxies. Come on, that's not even a real thing in this context. So, what do I do?" Gavin grinned, and it was the grin of a man who loved his job. We respond and we make it clear that not only is her demand baseless, but if she continues this harassment, we'll countersue for actual damages. Give me an hour. 53 minutes later, Gavin sent me a draft of the response letter and it was beautiful, professional, concise, and absolutely devastating. It pointed out that Clarissa had never been a legal tenant, that I had evidence of being the sole financial provider, that the social media posts were made by third parties without my involvement or encouragement, and that her demand for $20,000 was without merit and appears to be a continued pattern of harassment following the dissolution of the relationship. But the best part was the closing paragraph. "Additionally, we have become aware of social media posts made by your client wherein she discusses this legal matter publicly and makes defamatory statements about our client. We have documented these posts, including video evidence from the incident that precipitated this separation, which clearly contradicts your client's narrative. Should your client continue this pattern of harassment and false accusations, we will have no choice but to pursue legal remedies, including but not limited to a restraining order and a countersuit for defamation and malicious prosecution. We strongly advise your client to cease all contact with our client and to refrain from making further public statements about this matter." I read it twice and then said to Gavin, "You mentioned the party videos." "Oh, yeah," he said, grinning. "I watched them. Everyone's watched them. They're like the most popular videos in our local Facebook groups right now. And they're excellent evidence that your ex-wife's version of events is, shall we say, not based in reality. Can we mention the fake pregnancy thing? Let's keep that in our back pocket for now. But yes, we have that too if we need it. We sent the letter that same day, certified mail, return receipt requested because if we were doing this, we were doing it properly. And then we waited. The response came faster than I expected. 3 days later, Gavin called me, laughing so hard he could barely speak. She dropped it. He managed to say between gasps. Her lawyer sent a 1-sentence email saying they're no longer pursuing the matter. That's it. 1 sentence. After further review, we have decided not to pursue this matter at this time. I've never seen someone fold faster in my entire career. So, it's over. It's over. Well, the lawsuit thread is over. You should still probably file for an actual divorce. But the intimidation tactic failed spectacularly. I hung up and sat in my truck for a minute, Processing the fact that I'd just been threatened with a lawsuit, responded appropriately, and watched it dissolve like cotton candy in water. The worthless loser had won again, but honestly, it didn't feel like winning. It just felt like surviving someone else's poor decisions. Trevor bought me a beer that night to celebrate. And as we sat in his living room playing video games like we were still in our 20s, I realized something. I'd spent so much energy over the past few weeks just dealing with Clarissa's drama that I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to just exist peacefully. But now, with the legal threat gone and the harassment finally seeming to slow down, I could actually focus on building my life instead of defending it. You know what the best part is? Trevor said, not looking away from the screen. What's that? She paid a lawyer to write that demand letter. Probably cost her at least $500. And she got nothing out of it except looking even more ridiculous. I smiled. That is pretty good. The loser strikes again, Trevor said, and we both laughed because sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to engage with crazy and watching it defeat itself. 3 weeks into my new life as a business owner and semi-viral internet sensation, I was starting to think that maybe the universe had finally run out of plot twists for the Marcus and Clarissa saga. I should have known better. The universe has a sick sense of humor and an unlimited special effects budget when it comes to karma. And it was about to deliver its most spectacular scene yet. I was installing a new thermostat for a client in Oakwood when Trevor sent me a text that consisted entirely of emoji. The eyes emoji, the popcorn emoji, and the fire emoji. This was Trevor's way of saying something dramatic is happening, and you need to check your phone immediately. I finished connecting the wires, tested the system to make sure it was working properly, and then stepped outside to call him. Please tell me this is good news for once, I said when he picked up. Oh, it's good news, Trevor said. And I could hear the smile in his voice. It's such good news that I almost feel bad for enjoying it as much as I am. Almost. What happened? Your ex-wife just got fired. I stood there in my client's driveway, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I just heard. What? Fired? Terminated? Let go? Given the old pink slip, shown the door, escorted out by security, according to Jessica, who works in the same building. Jessica was Trevor's girlfriend, who worked in marketing for a company on the same floor as Clarissa's office. They'd met at some networking thing and had been dating for about 6 months, which meant Trevor now had access to all the best office gossip from Clarissa's workplace. It was like having our own personal spy network, except instead of international espionage, we were just tracking the downfall of one particularly dramatic woman. Why? I asked. Because getting fired seemed like a pretty extreme consequence even for Clarissa's level of chaos. Okay, so apparently someone, and by someone I mean multiple someone, sent the party videos to her company's HR department along with screenshots of all her social media posts about you. The ones where she called you abusive, the ones where she talked about the lawsuit, all of it. And her company, which is all about corporate values, an inclusive workplace culture or whatever, decided that having an employee who publicly humiliates and verbally abuses their spouse doesn't really align with their brand. I sat down on the curb because my legs suddenly felt like they couldn't support my weight. Someone sent the videos to her job. Multiple people, apparently. Jessica said HR got at least 5 separate emails over the past week, all with the same videos and screenshots, all pointing out that Clarissa's behavior was problematic and asking if this was really the kind of person the company wanted representing them. I didn't send anything, I said quickly, because I needed Trevor to know that. I didn't have anything to do with this. I know you didn't, man. This was all organic grassroots karma. The internet decided Clarissa needed consequences and delivered them directly to her employer. You can't orchestrate that kind of thing. It just happens when you piss off enough people publicly. After I hung up with Trevor, I sat there for another few minutes watching clouds drift across the sky and trying to figure out how I felt about this news. Part of me felt vindicated, like finally someone in authority had looked at Clarissa's behavior and said, yeah, this isn't okay. But another part of me felt kind of bad because losing your job sucks no matter who you are or what you've done. I sat with those two feelings for a while and eventually the vindication won out. Not because I'm a bad person, but because Clarissa had spent the last month trying to destroy my life, my reputation, and my career. And this felt less like revenge and more like balance being restored to the universe. I finished up with my client, collected payment, and drove back to my apartment. I was looking forward to a quiet evening of ordering pizza and working on my business accounting, which I realize makes me sound about as exciting as a tax seminar. But honestly, peace and quiet had become my new favorite luxury. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building and was about to get out of my truck when I saw her. Clarissa was sitting in her car, that champagne-colored BMW that she'd leased, despite me telling her it was way outside our budget. And by our budget, I met my budget since I was the one paying all the bills. And she was crying. Not the pretty strategic crying from her Instagram posts, but actual ugly crying. The kind with mascara running down your face and your nose turning red and your whole body shaking with sobs. For a second, I considered just walking past her car and going inside. I didn't know her anything. She'd burned every bridge between us and then tried to blow up the riverbank for good measure. But there was something about seeing another human being in that much pain, even a human being who caused me a significant amount of pain, that made me stop. I stood there in the parking lot, keys in hand, having a full internal debate with myself about whether basic human decency required me to check on her or whether self-preservation meant I should run away like my hair was on fire. Unfortunately, for my evening plans, basic human decency won. I walked over to her car and tapped on the window. She jumped like I'd fired a gun, looked up at me with eyes that were so swollen and red she could barely open them. And for a moment, I saw actual fear cross her face. Like she thought I was there to gloat or make things worse. That look bothered me more than I wanted to admit. She rolled down the window a crack, just enough to talk through, but not enough that I could reach in, which was probably smart given our recent history. "What do you want?" she asked, and her voice was from crying. "I heard what happened," I said, keeping my distance and my tone neutral. "With your job, are you here to celebrate?" She shot back, but there was no real fire behind it. She sounded exhausted, defeated, like she'd used up all her fight and had nothing left but sadness. "No," I said honestly, "I'm not. I didn't have anything to do with it, Clarissa. I didn't send anything to your company. I didn't tell anyone to send anything. This wasn't me." She laughed, but it was bitter and broken. "It doesn't matter if it was you or not. My life is ruined, Marcus. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I lost my husband. I lost everything. And it's all because of you." And there it was. Even in her lowest moment, even sitting in a car in a parking lot crying so hard she could barely breathe, she still couldn't take responsibility for her own actions. It was still my fault. I was still the villain in her story. I took a deep breath trying to decide how honest I wanted to be. I could be kind. I could comfort her. I could tell her it would get better and help would come and this too shall pass. Or I could tell her the truth. I chose truth. "No, Clarissa," I said quietly. "You lost your job because people saw how you treated me and decided they didn't want to work with someone like that. You lost your apartment because it was never yours to begin with. You were living rentrée in my place. And you didn't lose your husband. You threw him away when you called him a worthless loser in front of 30 people. I didn't ruin your life. You did that all by yourself." She stared at me through that crack in the window, tears still streaming down her face. And for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd actually hear what I was saying, that she'd have some kind of breakthrough moment where she realized that actions have consequences and treating people badly eventually catches up with you. Instead, she said, "You're such a bastard." I shrugged. "Maybe, but at least I'm an honest bastard who paid his bills and didn't call his spouse garbage in public. Look, you need to leave. You don't live here anymore. And sitting in the parking lot crying isn't going to change anything. Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. And there was real panic in her voice now. "I don't have anywhere to go, Marcus. I don't have any money. I don't have. You have your mom." I interrupted. "You have your sister. You have those friends who came with you to try to guilt trip me into taking you back. Call one of them. Figure it out. But you can't stay here. And you can't keep showing up at my home or my job, expecting me to fix your problems. We're done, Clarissa. We've been done. You need to accept that and move on." She looked at me with such hatred that I actually took a step back. "I hope you're happy," she spat. "You know what?" I said, and I felt this weird sense of calm wash over me. "I am. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. My business is doing great. I have clients who respect me. I have friends who support me. I sleep well at night because I'm not constantly worried about saying or doing the wrong thing and getting torn apart for it. So yeah, Clarissa, I am happy and I'm sorry you're not, but that's not my responsibility anymore." I turned and walked toward my apartment building and I didn't look back. I heard her car start up, heard the engine rev a little too hard, like she was angry at the vehicle itself, and heard her tires squeal as she pulled out of the parking lot, probably faster than was safe or legal. I stood in the lobby for a minute watching through the glass doors to make sure she actually left and didn't try to follow me inside. And then I went up to my apartment. Trevor called about an hour later. Jessica said Clarissa showed up at their office building after she got fired trying to argue with security about getting back in to get her stuff. They had to threaten to call the cops. She's having a full breakdown. I know. I said she was in my parking lot crying when I got home. Did you talk to her for about 2 minutes? Told her it wasn't my fault she got fired and that she needed to go stay with family or friends. She called me a bastard and left. How do you feel? I thought about it for a minute. Really thought about it. Honestly, I feel bad that another person is suffering, but I don't feel responsible for it. She made choices. Those choices had consequences. That's not on me. That's very mature of you, Trevor said. Well, look on the bright side, I said, opening a beer and settling onto my couch. At least now when people ask me what happened to my marriage, I can tell them my ex-wife lost her job for being the kind of person who loses jobs for treating people badly. Really streamlines the whole explanation process. Trevor laughed. That's dark, man. Yeah, well, it's been a dark month. I'm entitled to a little dark humor. The next morning, I woke up to discover that Clarissa had posted another Instagram story. This one about losing everything to a narcissist and corporate America not supporting women. The comment section was even less sympathetic than before. Someone had posted a link to one of the party videos with the caption, "Is this what supporting women looks like?" Another person wrote, "Maybe don't verbally abuse people if you want to keep your job in corporate America." I blocked her on all social media after that. Not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. I didn't need to see her descent into victimhood documented in real time. I had a business to run, clients to serve, and a life to build. Whatever she was going through, however, she was dealing with the consequences of her actions. That was her journey now, not mine. And you know what? I slept great that night. 6 weeks after walking out of that birthday party, my company, which I'd officially renamed BT Climate Control, short for Better Than Clarissa because I'm petty and proud of it, was absolutely killing it. Word spreads fast in this business. Especially when you're the guy who got publicly humiliated and then turned it into motivation instead of a midlife crisis. Megan. Yes, that Megan who'd been at the intervention looking at me like I was something she'd scraped off her Louboutins actually DM'd me on Instagram. "Marcus, I owe you an apology. After you left that day, we all started really talking and we realized you were the one keeping Clarissa's life together. She's been struggling. Anyway, my boyfriend runs a clinic and they need HVAC work. Interested?" One installation turned into 4 more contracts. Apparently, being the good guy in a viral breakup is excellent for business. 2 months later, I ran into Diane at a coffee shop. She actually apologized, saying Clarissa had finally told her everything, including Miami. "You didn't deserve any of that, Marcus. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner." I thanked her. Closure felt good. The following week, I was filling up gas when I saw her. Clarissa, driving a beat-up 2005 Honda Civic that coughed like a chain smoker, pulled up 2 pumps over. She looked tired, worn down, nothing like the confident woman who'd called me worthless in front of 30 people. She saw my new truck, white, shiny, with BT Climate Control. "We fix what's broken" in bold letters on the side. Our eyes met for half a second. She froze, turned away quickly, and didn't say a word. Trevor asked later, "You good?" "Better than good," I said. I just followed her advice. What advice? She told me to stop being her loser. So, I did. Now I'm my own boss, living my best life. And honestly, the worthless loser is doing pretty damn well.